Hi everyone. I invite you to subscribe to my channel and listen to another love story. Matchmaker, matchmaker, find me a match. Peggy hummed this tune as she wrote down in her yellow notebook the names of two people she knew from church. Peggy was the matchmaker, introducing unseasoned people who had trouble finding a mate on their own. She loved it when she was able to bring two people together who didn't even seem like they should like each other. Peggy thought of Kathy and her husband James. She had managed to bring those two together, but it hadn't been easy. It had been a long time ago. James was very stubborn when it came to being forthcoming. In fact, it was his son Jeremy who helped bring Katie and James together. It all started at a very large Baptist church in Houston, Texas. There were two separate groups there. One was for those who had never been married, and the other was for those who were already married and divorced for some reason. James had dark hair and hazel eyes and was working as a security officer at the time. He was divorced not too long ago, but the breakup was hard. He was able to see his son every weekend while he wasn't working. Peggy saw James at church and remembers that he was reluctant to talk about getting married again. Whenever the singles groups went out to eat after the service, Peggy made sure James sat next to Kathy. She wished she could get them together. James never seemed to remember Kathy's name when he sat next to her, or the pretenses he was making. He showed no attention to the ladies. One evening in another May, groups of singles gathered for an event. Everyone was playing games in a large gymnasium. They played basketball in one corner, and a volleyball net was set up in another corner, and there was a game going on there too. They were having fun. Katie, with her light brown hair done up in a hairstyle, had hazel green eyes. Very pretty. Katie looked around and didn't see anyone familiar that evening. But she did notice a little boy with blonde hair and blue eyes sitting off to the side. She went up to him and talked to him. They talked for quite a while. After about 30 minutes of talking, Jeremy's father came up to the boy to see who he was talking to. Katie introduced herself. They introduced themselves and James went back to playing volleyball. After all, James pretended not to remember names again. This time the man was interested in Katie. Katie stayed with Jeremy most of the night, socializing with him. She even sat with James and Jeremy and had dinner with them. It's so great that they are interested in socializing. Peggy was especially excited to see the couple. At some point, Katie and James started dating. At first, they would just go to church and have dinner together with a singles group, and then James started coming to Kathy's house to visit and watch science fiction movies. Sometimes he would take his son Jeremy with him. There were times that Jeremy would fall asleep on the book he brought with him. A few more months went by, and after a retreat that the singles were having, James decided to end his relationship with Kathy for some reason. He told her, "I just want to stay friends." Kathy wiped a tear from one of her eyes. She hated to hear that, but she was determined not to let James see her upset. She tried to hold on. One night they said goodbye in the church after the service and walked out at different times. Katie tried to focus on her relationship with God. One day she read a scripture that said, "Wait on the Lord and all good things will come." Well, what was left for Kathy to do? So Kathy focused on her work. She hadn't heard from James for about a month. Then the phone rang and a child's voice said, "Miss Katie?" It was Jeremy calling Katie. "I miss you. Can you come with me and my daddy to Galveston?" asked the baby. Kathy was very pleased with the boy's call. How could Kathy compete with a 3-year-old asking to see her? So of course she said yes. Then James, listening to his son, came and got Katie. Jeremy sat in the middle between Katie and James, wearing his seatbelt. They made it to the ferry and parked the car. They watched the water as the ferry crossed to Galveston. There wasn't much talking at first. The adults were a little stiff. But Katie and Jeremy then were already singing songs and reading books on the way to and during the ferry ride. When they got off the ferry and into Galveston, Jeremy was fast asleep. This allowed James and Katie to talk to each other. They decided that day that they would try to get their relationship back on track. And soon they were engaged. Peggy, the so-called matchmaker, wondered about this, about their pairing. I wonder if I had anything to do with getting them engaged or not. Well, I guess it doesn't matter anymore. The main thing is that everything worked out well. And they're still together after 29 years, and they have 4 kids. Well, and Peggy wrote down one more name to help find a match, and she went back to work thinking about how she could bring lonely people together. To give them a family, to give them happiness. Thank you, and please like.